for everyone who's online to vote for what species group we tackle next. Because we still have, I'm sure, 2 more days of Megachile, but, coming up, should be thinking about what we might do next.
Oh, wait, I do have an announcement. Oh my gosh. Next class will be our first Bumblebee class with Elaine.
Good. Oh, great. All right, well, we'll have to.
So I'll make that announcement. I'll put it up on the listserv and all of that. But definitely, if you're watching this in recording, try to come September the 14th. Or I forget what region she's doing. Is that Northwest, maybe?
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. So next week.
Yay. I'm trying to get my microscope light to work here, but I think we'll jump to the guide and I'll let Mike explain while I try and get this to acknowledge better what's going on. It's on. Robert, I'm going to be online here, but so I'll share my screen and we will jump to the latest version that just got sent out of Mike's Megachile mail key. As always, we are always working on keys, and so I'm going to jump. So can everyone see on their screen the highlighted yellow part of the new key? Is that showing up?
I don't.
We don't see your screen.
Okay, I think I didn't share.
And then emailing the group the keys, or the new key as of an hour ago.
Yeah, and it's probably not significantly different for what we're going to talk about today.
Actually, it is.
Oh, it is. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, because I forgot to add one species, and I just noticed that the other day.
Okay.
It's a common one. I don't know how I missed it, but.
Right. So. All right. So, do you see the guide now on your screens?
Yep.
Okay. And so that was frugalis, I think, that you were talking about.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we might we should get into that. Actually, we will, because we left off here.
Right there. Yeah.
And we discussed the species that have hair patterns that aren't banded, and that have 4 teeth. And now we're going to jump to the 3-toothed ones, and that have more the, let's say, classic characteristics of the species. I think we did talk about pruina, so we're going to skip that, and we're going to jump down here to well, we did both ingenua and pruina. So wait a minute, why am I? Oh, so this goes to 19. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and there we are now here, and but I indicated on the last one that this is the couplet that was missed. So sorry, let me work on my, actually I can't now because you'll see what I'm doing. But so anyway, let's talk about frugalis. I'll pull a frugalis specimen while you're talking, Mike.
Right, so this next group of species, which there are 4 in the east and several others out west, is in this group that's always been called Apis. It's a subgenus and still is. And they're big, long and narrow, in both sexes. And the males all have 3 teeth on the mandible and a ventrobasal tooth. And many of them are fairly common. So the first one, frugalis, is the only one in the east that has normal, what we just call normal legs. The front tarsi aren't modified. They look just like the mid tarsi, and they're not yellow. They're just dark and they're narrow, very very normal looking. All the other 3 that we'll get to have highly modified front tarsi.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm gonna flip to the microscope. It says error in communicating with camera. And let me switch back there, switch here, see if it's not loading the screen. I'm gonna dive out and dive back in on this.
Okay.
And then I've got frugalis here as well as pugnata, but I don't have policaris to look at, but it should just take a second to do that. And
So
what else? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, these are all above ground cavity nesters in holes in wood or twig nests or trap nests, and they're fairly well known. I mean, because of the fact that you can get them in nests and study them. The biology of most of these four species is fairly well known, and they like composites or Asteraceae, and fairly, at least frugalis is fairly common, at least in the Midwest. I find it frequently. I don't know how common it is on the East.
Not super common. In fact, when we started, we got the first record for Maryland.
Wow.
And now I've got a handful, but not like tons. They just have almost the impression that they're increasing in numbers.
And another thing about frugalis males is above the forecoxal spines, there are no bristles. It's just long white hairs. And the other three species that we'll get to all have really unique reddish bristles on the front coxae, which are otherwise bare. So it's frugalis stands out from the other three pretty distinctively.
Right, in particular with lack of the gigantic white tarsal segments on the front legs.
Yeah.
So I'm apologizing here. I'm not using the microscope. Behaves very nicely, and this time it is not. We're going to open it back up again. All right, that part worked. That's working. And yeah, and I have, aren't they a legume lover, the frugalis?
Well, they like legumes and composites, both, at least in the Midwest. I mean, those are the two things you find in that, almost right, without almost exception. And it's also true of the other three, pugnata, policaris, and inimica. They love Asteraceae and occasionally things in the bean family.
Yeah, I see them a lot on the big composites.
Yep.
All right, it seems to be thinking that it will play with us. And there it is. The software always shows that. Doesn't like how much space I have on there. And we should be able to click live. And there we go. Okay.
Good.
All right, so I'm zooming in. I've got frugalis on the deck.
Sam, can you change your cursor before we get into the microscope world?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Super.
Okay. See it.
So we will flip this over so we can see the. Take the specimens off here. Labels. So we can see the four tarsi, and then we will contrast. I've got pugnata right up here. What were some of the prior characteristics that got us to frugalis?
Well, three teeth, three mandibular teeth, spines on the front coxa, they're pretty obvious. And this group, inimica, frugalis, and the next three species that follow, all have well-defined fascia on the tergites, very distinctive and very white, very bold, and very complete.
And the CT, which are pretty much absent here on the front coxa, just hairs. Let me turn it around to the other side. I think the forward tibia is easier to see. I think, in Discover Life, it seems to key pretty quickly down to the species. And, we're looking at the pugnata, which I should never put them on the same piece of clay. Okay, so here, and I'll do full screen here too, but here, basically we're showing that there's really nothing going on here in terms of the
front legs.
Front legs is going to be magically different. If we can, this should be the four coxa there, and it's hard to see down there, but Mike, you said there is a spine, which I think we're looking straight down on, but there's no CT down there, just hairs.
No, just long white hairs. Yeah.
So, given how difficult it is to see into those areas where to see nothing, we're going to say that that's acceptable view of that. And now I'm going to switch to pugnata, and we can see the lovely characters it has on its forecoxa, including the mysterious row of black CT there. I'm going to put this away. All right, so now pugnata can come into play.
So in the upper Midwest, pugnata is really common, but in Missouri and further south, there are just a handful of records. I don't know about along the East Coast. But...
Yeah, so in Maryland, it's very regular. I've got them at home. I've got them here at the lab, and if you put up trap nests, you see those, see them in the trap nests regularly. If you put up like your hotels, bee hotels for osmia, then later in the summer, pugnata will show up. I'm going to drop the lighting down just a little bit.
Yeah, so we're looking at the front legs there, and that bold narrow patch of black CT is on the basotarsi, the enlargement or the expansion of it. Very distinctive.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you can see how huge that is, and then this brush here of black hairs, I think that's how it basically is going to be separating it from inimica, right?
Mm-hmm. Among other things, yeah.
Yeah, so what are some of I'm not looking at the guide right now, we can flip back, but now that I'm less discombobulated. So we're skipping policaris, and with policaris, which is in our area would be a much further to the south. I think there's no records for Maryland, for example, species. and it has this very broad and flattened mid-basotarsus that's different and bigger and wider than the hind basotarsus. So that's really obvious, but sadly I don't have a male to show for it.
Yeah, policaris is very common in the central Midwest. Maybe it's definitely more common than pugnata. Or,
Oh.
Yeah, it's a cool looking bee for sure.
And it looks like it has some differences in the number of CT 1 to 2 versus 2 to 5, and maybe the others below here have smaller CT.
That's right. And the front coxae are yellow, completely yellow, and in the others they're dark. So policaris stands out, and it's really distinctive. The males anyway.
So here we're looking at the difference between inimica and pugnata. Both are in Maryland too, and we were looking at the pugnata specimen. We still have it up on the screen there. What else do we have? So you want to talk about the apex?
Yeah, when you look at that, and Sam had it in focus there, that enlargement of the basotarsus. You can kind of tell, I think, in this picture. In pugnata, it reaches further down to the tarsal segments than inimica does by one segment. So if you look at that front tarsi, all the segments together, the tip of the scale, or the tip of that enlargement of the basotarsus, reaches to the third tarsal segment in pugnata, but only to the second in inimica. But the other thing, though, the most obvious thing is what you're seeing right in front of you, that dark, very discrete patch of dark hairs. Now, inimica has some dark hairs, but it's not. It's far less distinct, and you'd never confuse them. So that's maybe the best field mark for the male, right? A pugnata, what you're looking at right there.
Yeah, that's usually what I focus in on when looking at them. And you just looking at your other characters here with the pugnata, lower genal margin below the eye with large bare area. Sort of reflecting what's in the female, which that big pulled out prong. Okay, we'll take a look at that. See, can't quite see it here, but we'll flip that over. And what do you think that prong is for? So in the females, right about here would be this big, it's not really a spine, I guess, but projecting tooth almost.
Well, for anybody that's ever had the opportunity to watch pugnata nesting, they're aptly named because they are truly pugnacious. I mean, they tear out the nests of other nearby megachilids. It could be their own species, and I've seen this over and over. And that's. So I don't know if that thing hanging down from the female's cheek is involved in that, but they're a very aggressive species with respect to other megachilids.
Right. You could see if a lot of their MO is to hook, it would be that could hook out the nesting material pretty quickly and perhaps be reused. So I think this is the area you're talking about, but it's not visible so well. So I'm going to change the perspective a little bit here and see more down below. But it's bare spot, right, Mike? Yeah,
it is. Now, I suppose if specimens come out of liquid and aren't dried right or something, it might not show up as well. There you go. You're kind of seeing it there. And in inimica, it would be far less obvious.
So we're talking this area right here?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Or this area back here? That seems to be
Ye-
too far back on the cheek. That may
Yeah,
be,
it's-
again, most of our specimens are coming out of liquid. Well, we'll contrast the two. And this would be, this area right here would be the area for the, where the prong would be in the female.
Yeah.
And this, I'm just a little bit confused. So here's the bottom of the eye. Is this the edge of the mandible and the mandible over there? Or are we actually, it's not the mandible, is it?
I think that's the ventral basal, tooth or projection of the mandible.
Okay.
I think that's what that is.
Yeah, that's the problem with these microscope things here. Great, and it's tucked in and up. Yeah, so in that area, and again, we have less than perfect specimens that have been through the almost everything out of our lab is coming out of liquid. So I'm going to flip to inimica now.
Okay.
And take off the label. And we'll start with the front basotarsal area. And we're looking for a shorter projection of the basotarsal expanded space.
And in the Midwest, in the Midwestern species, yeah, the four tarsi aren't as bright yellow in inimica, and I think that's probably the same way on the coast. Compared to pugnata.
That's right. There's some subspecies, whatever that means, involved, aren't there, with inimica?
Yeah, there is one, at least one, still recognized, I think, that has all the legs are all red in the females. And that's the one.
Western.
That's the one we find in the Midwest almost all the time.
Oh.
Occasionally we find those with dark legs or mixed, so I don't really know.
We never see red ones. Like I
really
noticed that. Yeah, never.
Oh.
Never ever.
Okay. Yeah, they're bright.
They're
completely red, really distinctive in the
females. So here you can, it's quite a bit. The look and feel is quite different too. So this big projecting part of the front basal tarsus is not nearly as long as in the other species. And I'll try and roll it over, and we'll see what, if any, dark hairs are on the inside upper edge there. That we saw that long black band in pugnata male. So I'm not seeing it well here. May have to turn it over.
There's that little black dot again.
Right. So this should be the basotarsus, and it has black hairs, but not that big, crisp whole section. Out of curiosity, I'm going to see what we said in Discover Life here too about that, telling the two apart. So we'll go pick our jump. Should have had this set up already. And go to IDs and Megachile male. And after, again, as you use these keys, like with the Megachile, you may know that you just need to go in and look at just that inimica pugnata section. And you can do that through the has without clawing your way through the whole guide. Just like when you're using dichotomous keys, you often jump down to the section you think is the one you want. So we want, if I can see that small. Oh, there we go. Pugnata versus inimica. So in DL, so we'll be adding Mike's characteristics here too. We have Francis Mullen is coming in to work with us tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to start in on that. So front basotarsus is lacking a distinct brush that we were looking at here. And you can see in this picture, this matches very nicely what we're looking at in the microscope here. You can see this, basically a fairly plain inner space without this huge projecting basotarsal wedge, which you can see in the picture here. And they don't have this one line of teeth. Let's see if we can blow this up over here. Yeah, no brush of black hair. So that's like a kind of brush you would, when you're going to church, you would take out the brush and brush your shoes to polish them, kind of thing. Going back a long time ago for me. So short hair along the inner rim of the base, long hair is about the same, rusty golden color. Scutum and T1 with hair of moderate length, and versus scutum and T1 with long and messy hair. I don't know how useful that is. Now let's go back to Mike's key. And so you want to talk about the other characteristics here, or did we pretty much cover?
I think you pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
There's, inimica doesn't get as far north as pugnata does. I mean, that's sometimes range helps narrow things down. So yeah, in the east, in the Midwest, southern Michigan, southern Wisconsin, southern Minnesota is that's it for inimica, but pugnata is way up into the Upper Peninsula and northern parts of the Midwest. Very common up there.
Yeah, so that takes care of that group. And also inimica is mostly to the south and not to the north where we are too. We're sort of at the northern edge. So we see it more on coastal plain, eastern shore. So here we're leaving this section of Mike's guide, and we're going here to 22. And for a lot of you know this, but you can tell where the jump for this character was by looking in the bracket. So this came from 6. We ignored that and went down the various legs of the guide till we got to pugnata, but now we're actually going back to an earlier place where and revisiting that. So here we have a couplet pair, one of which is going to take us to the 3 introduced species, the small species with the pseudofovea, and then the other couplet is going to take us into the lovely tangle of bees that are very common and that we have to deal with and try and figure out what's brevis, what is pseudobrevis, and what is mendica and texana and so forth. So in this particular couplet, the trick is seeing these pseudofovea on the hind abdomen. So I'm going to go put something up on deck if you want to talk about that a little bit more, Mike.
Yeah, these when we did the female Megachile, we talked about this and looked at some, and these pseudofovea, or these weak depressions of very, very fine, dense hairs, show up better in the males, at least the way I see it, than they do in the females. But they're present on both. So that's a useful character. If you see that and it's on the T2 or T3, you know it's this group. And they also tend to be small. There's not much overlap. Brevis, small specimens of brevis sometimes overlap with the bigger specimens of rotundata and its relatives. But in general, they're little, and it stands out. And apicalis, at least in the Midwest, which is the rare one we don't hardly ever see, that has fovea on T2 and T3. And the specimens I have, it is super distinct. You can't miss it. The other 2 species, rotundata and concinna, in which there may be another 4th species masquerading as concinna, there's only fovea on T2. And depending on how telescoped the abdomen is, sometimes those can be concealed or partly concealed. So sometimes you do have to look pretty carefully.
And I'll also mention that if you don't prepare your specimens very well in terms of washing them, then this fovea, which we're going to look at here, is often obscured because it's really a pretty fine, just sort of, I call them skid marks, distinction of patterns in the integument. So if you can't, and you really are going to be rocking this back and forth a lot to see, and this will pop out. And it takes a while. Like when I was first starting out, I was like, what are they talking about? And what am I looking for? I think a helpful thing is if you see a megachile that's unusually small, you should immediately start looking for these things, even if you don't have a lot of experience with that. So you can see it's not like there's a huge recessed area. It's not like Andrina fovea. It's not like coleoxis slots on T2. It's just a little bit of a different pattern there. And you really are going to change the visuals back and forth to see it. This is rotundata.
This on deck? Thank you.
Yeah, rotundata. And so there's nothing here on T3. This is the most common species where we are, probably where you are too.
Yep.
Super disturbed sites, urban, but you know, they leak into old fields all the time too, so you can't just use that. Here's the other one over here. You can actually see that pretty well at the same time. And we'll look at this in a second. Concinna is, or Pusilla, depending on who you're believing these days, is the trickier one because we'll take a look and see if we can find them. It's often just this tiny little slot there. I'll also bring in Discover Life because we have a male section too, and we'll see how, because this is a tricky group to split apart here. And let's see, I better just look it up. So here we have, so now we'll look at the differences between these three. And so we have rotundata. So as Mike mentioned, and I'm sure is in your keys here too, T2 is the only place that has patches in rotundata. And these patches take up about 1/4 of the lateral distance. And, you know, we spent a little time explaining what to look for people who never look for those. T3, no patches. And hairs on T5, I think this will help separate apicalis from this. Hairs on T5, all light colored. And tarsal claws. Oh, this is something that the guy who did the revision in Europe talks about. We can try and take a look at this. So you look at the hind tarsal claw and there's CT. This is like, who would even look at this? Mike, you would look at this, but you look at the CT behind the claw and we're going to have to look at the length. So let's try and track those down. And so we'll take a look at back at rotundata here again. So Mike, what are the characteristics that you use in your key to separate out as I'm moving this specimen around a little bit?
Rotundata and concinna, or whatever it is.
Or an apicalis, all of that whole group.
Apicalis males have fovea, very obvious fovea on T2 and T3. I mean, it's, you know, and they are slow.
Yeah.
Well, the ones I have, I mean, it's very, to me, it shows up pretty readily.
Right, but you don't have to deal with gooky, you know, horrible specimens. So
sometimes I do.
That's true.
But the real trick is, you know, rotundata and concinna, or whatever we're calling it. Those two can really be, depending on the condition of the specimens, can be very difficult. And that's why I included, this is the genitalia characteristics.
Oh, okay. So you have some genitalia.
I didn't include those for any other Megachile species, but for these two, I did just as an insurance, if you want to think of it that way. But the 4 basetarsal hair fringe on the two is slightly different. But again, if the specimens are messed up or not dried right or something, that can be very difficult to figure out. There's also something that concinna has what we call a tubercle at the kind of behind the base of the mandible on the cheek that's hidden by hair, but it's there. And rotundata doesn't have that, but it's not easy to see. But you know, that's one of the classic ways of separating those two.
Yeah, I'm not sure our European revision guy, I think Sebastini, I think he was the guy maybe who did this. Anyway, I'm trying to, of course, now you're in need of really higher powered microscopes. We're looking at the hind tarsal claws, and this is not the exact right angle, but there's CT behind the edge of the tarsal claw here that he uses. It says, first CT behind claw, long and hair-like, second one similar but slightly shorter. So you can see one sticking out, but this is a terrible shot, and I'm not sure I can easily get that. So, and I don't want to spend too much time just trying to get a picture of the CT on this one. We might see it better on one of the other specimens and just try and find out where that is. So let's flip to, we'll go to apicalis. And I think we mentioned when we talked about the females, apicalis is a, at least according to the books and where I found them too, is a knapweed specialist. Now, I don't know whether it's star thistle too, but the common spotted knapweed that in the east over here is everywhere. Like any railroad tracks are my favorite place to look because it can handle the sprays that are getting laid down in these track areas. And so it's one of the few things that seems to grow there. I'm looking at my apicalis specimens, and I'm wondering if I. Oh, nope, I do have a male. Okay, so first on bench is going to be to find the T2 and T3, and it's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not great in itself, but you'll get, no matter almost what you do, you're going to get a bunch of rotundata. And then when apicalis shows up, it might be illuminating just from the size. All right, so here is the male. And I'm trying to get in, and I may have to change the lighting again so we can see, hopefully, I may have to bend the wings back here a little bit. See T2, T3 ovia in here. We may be at a bad angle also. Yeah, let me turn it around this way and see if that does anything for us. Okay.
Yeah, not seeing much.
I'm really not seeing it. I mean, it's possible that I have placed they don't have depths on each of these. I placed a concinna in here by mistake. And usually I think also in the Discover Life guides, I think it talks about that there's black hairs on T5. T5 with short, slightly thickened, upright black hairs. These hairs only slightly longer than on T3, T4. So I'm wondering if I have put the wrong specimen in the wrong box here, and this is my only male in here. So I'm going to swap that out and maybe jump to concinna. Just taking a look under my microscope to see if I can see that. Yeah, I think this is concinna. So I'm going to set that aside and make sure that I put it in the right place this time. And and sadly, that's my only male apicalis. So let me go now to a pretty big box here of concinnas. And we'll take a look at that. And here the problem might be seeing these relatively small patches of the pseudophobia, which are just really subtle on this one and much narrower. So this one appears to have, is nice looking specimen, and you can kind of see, and you can see the area well, but I think we'll also see like it's really difficult to define in this one a fovea area. So T1, T2. So in this area should be my impression when I do see these, and I do struggle sometimes with even seeing them, that it's narrower.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so it should be in this area. And when I was looking under my other microscope, I was like, maybe, but in reality, like it's so vague. Yeah.
I think you're looking at T3.
Oh, right up here.
Up here. Yeah, T1 is smushed up against the propydium.
Let's bring that up and see if we can see it there.
Yeah, pretty obscure.
Yeah. I'm going to change. I can move the lights around. Let's see. So sometimes you can see some things. You can see that area doesn't change, but I don't know if that means anything in this particular context. I just, yeah, it's tough. I don't really see it. That could be it there. But that's sort of the characteristic you have to deal with. And so the fact that it is hard to see should make you think of concinna. A lot of times on the rear end, it's got more, I'm going to bring it around here. These aren't really in the keys, but I see a lot more small teeth at the backside of these things. It's also a disturbed site species. So I see more of these kind of toothinesses at the end of the abdomen. And you can see there are black hairs on the sides, as many species are, but in apicalis, T5 here would have, big, bold black hairs all the way across on that one. So let's see, what else do we have here for differentiating them? Concinna, T5 with robust, long, upright, dark hairs. These hairs about twice as long as on T3 and T4. And then legs, hind dorsal claw, behind the claw, second much shorter and stouter and more spine-like. All right, we could take a look for that, but that's one of these really probably too much for this particular system. What about your guide here, Mike? What are you looking at?
I'm like you. If I know it's in that one of those two, and the pseudophobia are really obscure, and I'm not even sure they're really there, then I look at the base of the mandible for that tubercle. And sometimes you have to take a pin, and depending on the condition of the hairs, and kind of feel your way. And if the specimen's in good condition, the hair fringe on the four base tarsi is different between the two, but it's subtly, you almost have to have
Comparative.
both of them to compare. But I mean, I think people are getting the point that those two are difficult. The males are difficult to separate, and sometimes the genitalia, if they're out, that helps. In rotundata and concinna, there's hairs are present or absent along the goncoccytes, and that's pretty obvious. But usually, megachilids, when they die, they don't stick out the genitalia. You have to extract them, and that can be time consuming.
Right, particularly if you don't do it right away.
Yes.
Are we looking at it right there?
Sam, I'm not sure. It could be. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
think
this,
so.
these are specimens that get matted down on all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's
that's
possibly it's just been revealed, or my only other thought is that it's somehow, oh, you know what? No, I think it's the projecting tooth on the mandible.
Okay.
Yeah, because here's a other mandible, 1, 2, 3 going off that direction, and or is it?
Well, it's in the right place.
It looks like it's coming right off the malar.
Yeah, that's where it should be.
The mandible base is there. Yeah, because here's the clypeus hair over the clypeus as usual. There's the base. Yeah, okay. And so in the other species, I guess we're just lucky being able to see this. Is it just absent or lower?
Yeah, it's absent.
Okay.
I mean, there is some roughness there, but it's not like that. It's very
very cool. That's a new one on me. And then we added some. So I've spent a bunch of time with this group at several periods where I just pull them all out and go through them all again and like, okay, what am I missing here? So this is it can be a hair pulling group, and this is a good reason to keep them for a long period of time, because you might go back and find, that you mix things up or you have a little bit of better reference material. And there's no shame, like if you're doing surveys, and I do this all the time, where you're like, I can't tell. This is either apicalis or rotundata or whatever I'm looking at, or I just put it at the sub genus level, or I do a slash, it could be rotundata / pusilla. And later, if you have a database and you have the specimens still, you can go and update that if you get better information. So anything more we want to do with the concinna group? Okay, we have some hair things. Well, I'm going to do, because we magically were able to get that cool projection on the malar space. Let's see if we can see what they're talking about on the foot, on the hind tarsal claw. I'm not going to spend too much time trying to find it, but it is in the keys there. But the problem is, of course, getting a good look at the right angle of the tarsal claws. I'm going to look at that one. See if we can see. Well, all right. So you can see the tips of the tarsal claws. You can see that there's CT there. I'm not going to try and spend a bunch of time trying to find it around, but there are some differences in there, as well as the hairs on T5 back here, in terms of, I think this is T5 here. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see these long black hairs. If we go back to the Discover Life, and I'd be interested in seeing if you see this too, Mike. So here we talk about T5 with robust, long, upright, dark hairs. These hairs about twice as long as the hairs on T3 and T4. These long hairs here being longer than that, versus in apicalis, T5 with short, upright dark hairs, only slightly longer than on T3 and T4. So I was wrong because concinna has dark hairs, they're just long. And that seems to back up what we're looking at there. And I'll have to look at the specimen that I thought was apicalis. Again, I may have just simply moved it to the wrong box. Our boxes get pawed through all the time. All right, anything more on our lovely introduced friends?
I think that paints a pretty good picture.
Yep. Okay, so back to Mike's guide here. So we just went through the three, and so these were the ones with the pseudofovea and S2 to 3 with dense, extensive apical fascia, which is very similar to what we were seeing in the females, but in the females, of course, it's underneath, it's on the rims of the sternites underneath, and but still visible through the scopal or pollen carrying hairs, and they're just small. Now we get to travel to 25 and really get into some of the fun things. So this first couplet here, 27, is going to take us to two species that I have very limited experience with. So I'm going to punt to you, Mike, and I don't have any specimens, I don't think. I'll look, but you want to talk about the split there?
Yeah, there's a large group of Megachile in the country that used to be called Megachile, and they've been put into something else now. But they have one pretty distinctive characteristic: the preapical carina on T6 in the males of this group. When you look at it in lateral view, it isn't flat. It's weakly convex, and it doesn't have a notch in the medial. Versus all the others that come after it, the preapical carina on T6 is flattened, very flat, and it's also got a depressed, at the base of it, it's got a depression, kind of like a pit, very distinctive. So anyway, the only two species in the east, these are in the Midwest or the South, are Dakotensis and Deflexa. They're both sand obligates as far as we know. In the Midwest, Dakotensis is in the upper Midwest. It's no records from Missouri or Southern Illinois, but once you get around the Great Lakes, it shows up. And Deflexa is more southern and to the west.
And rare.
Yeah, and rare. I don't think there are any Midwestern records, but it's in the key just because, well, who knows,
Right. Yeah. Well, that stuff shows up actually all the time.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, those are not something you'll see, east of the Appalachians as far as we know, but you never know.
Right.
So that everything that comes.
Deflexa, I think, makes it up the coast. Here we can find that really quickly. A little bit. So if we go to the global mapper and we'll type in, I know it's all over Florida, all over being in quotes. And I think a lot of these Floridian things run up the coast a little bit. I'm going to get rid of John Asher's state records because that gets confusing because it puts it in the middle of the state. This is how in playing around with distributions, you should be thinking about, which is to get rid of. You could do it here. We could just do this right now. Drop points from county and state centroids. Okay, that just says here's a record. It says it's from the state. We don't have any more information, so we're just going to use the center of the state as a record. So John Asher keeps track of things state by state. So we just dropped a lot of his work, and maybe there were some others. So you can see there's a couple, first of all, this is like nothing. There's almost no records here to begin with. I think that one is my only record. And these are, that was like Wilmington probably. People like to go to the beach in Wilmington and, of course, collect. County Brunswick, what else would there be to do? Yeah, Wilmington. So it does look like it could be found in coastal plains, and that's probably the dunes. And that one is probably a Carolina beach. That one might be a centroid, and no one realized it because it sounds like a beach to me. Not in, depending on, like, that's from Kansas, so who knows how they databased it. It looked like in the wrong place. Anyway, sand dunes, other sorts of things for both. And sadly, we don't have that, but we do have plenty of the ones we're coming up with here. And what do we have for time, Claire?
We're coming up on the hour, but I am not in a rush to end you today. But since you open up my mic, Ellen asks, just the group, if you don't see in the chat, does anyone have a copy of the European Megachile revision? And it looks like Jean has shared something. So those are available to you.
And I'll pull up addenda, which is a good one to talk about if we're going to just talk about one more.
Yeah, addenda is a large bee, late spring, early summer, primarily at legumes in the Midwest, but there's some other records from very different plants, including cranberries.
Yeah, there's Jim Kane's famous cranberry article.
Yeah, that was mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Here's a bee that I'm used to thinking of as a legume specialist, and he's finding it on something that totally is unrelated.
And right, and cranberries are native, but they're not very common. And a lot of the areas that we're getting records of addenda, there's not a cranberry within 100 miles. So yeah, but why that pairing is odd?
Yeah, it's usually in the Midwest. It's in dry sites, not exclusively sand, but in dry, rocky prairies, and just one generation a year. Ground nester.
And they're big.
Oh,
compared
yeah.
to their lookalikes are in that sort of Mendica, Texana in particular, and brevis crowd, although they're very white, and sometimes brevis is more tan. But it's the biggest, and then it's got these I often just look right at the rear end because there's some pretty distinct characters here. So here, is this
Yeah,
S7
T7,
or that T7? Okay.
T7. That's the T7 spine.
And we'll change the perspective here because but you can see it now, and actually the genitalia are coming out. So that spine is super big, super obvious, and here is the rim of T6 is in here somewhere, and the flange, as we call it, or the projecting shelf is above here. And we'll change the perspective, but there's almost always a very, very large, super obvious cutout in the flange through which you can see that spine. Let me just see if we can change this view so that can be seen on screen. I just find that the flange itself is just pretty distinct. So here's the flange. So normally you just don't see this big of a dip, and the flange itself is actually quite, I'd say, enlarged compared to others. Here's that spine. I'll bring it into focus here. That there's some hairs around it, but it's almost always really pretty straightforward to see through the slot. And then that pretty much, I think that pretty much nails what that species is.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So.
And how common do you find it?
Well, I find it in, sorry, I just messed this up. I tend to find it in dry areas, I would call it. So it can be in sand, but it also can be in like super rocky Western Maryland
Yep.
things,
Yep.
and usually pretty good sites, you know,
Mhm.
not your like, oh, I find it in the middle of DC kind of thing, which the others often can show up. And so I would say regular would be how I would call it. It's never abundant, but every once in a while in some of these sand sites, I'll get a big string of them. So that's sort of my MO, but that's pretty uncommon. Let's see what else. There's what are, I mean
That's a patch of bristles on the front coxa.
oh yeah,
They're
right.
short and they're not easy to see really, but there's lots of them. They're just very, very short and dense.
I'll also point out, I don't know if does it show up in the males as much as the females, that there's quite a topography, I guess not as much. The topography of the tergites is, you know, like there's a pretty strong ridge and there's more relief in across the segment than in lots of species, but I guess that's pretty subtle. But let's find the CT. And so the front, like the others, maybe all the others in this group, they don't really have very expanded front basotarsi.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
There is a little bit of shape differences, which we talk about, but it's pretty subtle. So we're trying to, we're having the usual problem of trying to find our way into the legs, between the legs here on the specimen. You can see the
Yep.
spine, but
Yep.
we're trying to see below, and I don't know if we can see, you can see the other spine. Well, I think that's the other spine, so that should be the coxa there. We don't know if we're going to be, without spending, again, a lot of time here, super successful. And you say there's just one spine in there, right? One CT.
But no, there's a patch.
A patch, okay.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
But they're
And then how does that differ from the others?
Well, it's short and dense. Yeah, there's some others that are similar, but in terms of the species that follow from this point in the key on, it's pretty distinctive.
All right, I'm just going to try one more species since we're pretty much out of time, and just
I was going to say you're getting kind of in the weeds, and we are at 2:05. So like,
isn't the whole thing in the weeds? You know, really, really, Claire.
Okay. You have a point there.
All right, but yeah, well, we could ask if there's any questions, and I'll just pull another specimen or two and see if I can. Well, if anyone's talking. Find the multi. This looks promising. All right, well, maybe we can't quite see them, but there's certainly the shot we want to see. And I'm not seeing the CT there. Unless it's just so dark. Like this could be the CT right there.
I think it is. It's dark. And again, they are very short and fine. You almost have to see it in lateral, oblique
which is going to be
difficult.
Almost impossible. I'm going to pump up the light on it a lot to see if we may be just looking straight down on a fine thing.
Yeah, I can't see them.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll move the bristle thing in the key to the last part of the key, since they're that hard to see.
Well, yeah, and again, that might be the area right there. It's hard to see. Okay. All right, we'll stop. Are there any questions?
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Yeah.
No, that was
Gracious. Oh,
there's no
Oh, never mind. That was a female. There we go. I'm not going to look anymore. I just grabbed it like, oh, there's one, but it was a female.
We can look for it next time.
Yeah. Next time we get into all those, all the Mendica and Brevis and Texana are sort of the killer group. And we'll look at petulans, which is, I think, pretty straightforward. There's probably several more in there. And talk about subspecies and species of Brevis. I think there's a lot going on in that group. All right.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right. See you.